Hi, everyone. This is Andy from the Million Cat Challenge team. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join this webinar. We're lucky today to have with us Karen Green, Executive Director of Cat Adoption Team. Before we begin, we would like to thank Maddie's Fund for hosting this webinar and for making the Million Cat Challenge possible through their generosity. One other little bit of housekeeping. We are reserving the last 15 minutes or so for Karen to answer any questions that may come up during the presentation. You can submit questions as they arise during the webinar using the Q&A box that's in the left-hand column. Please send us questions as they occur to you, since we may not have time to answer questions asked at the last minute. If something comes up that you'd like to ask about, go ahead and type it in right away and we'll queue it up. And now I'd like to hand it off to Kate to introduce today's presenter.
Thanks, Andy, and thank you, Karen, and all of you for being here today. As Andy mentioned, Karen is the Executive Director of Cat Adoption Team, which is the Pacific Northwest's largest nonprofit feline-only adoption guarantee shelter. And she began her career serving at Best Friends Animal Society in various ways, starting as a vet tech, working with cats. So you might sense a theme developing here. She went on to become the Assistant Director of the National No More Homeless Pets program, where she focused on helping build effective organizations and no more homeless pet communities. And she served as the Senior Director of the Alliance for Contraception in Cats and Dogs for 6 years before she joined CAT as Executive Director in 2012. And she holds a bachelor's degree in organizational communication and a certificate in conflict resolution and mediation from Marylhurst University, and is proudly CAWA certified. And in her spare time, she has fostered dozens of cats, kittens, dogs, and puppies with a special interest in newborn and under-socialized adolescent animals. And she loves reading, musical theater, Birkenstocks, and her 12-year-old yellow lab, Sunny. I also hear through the grapevine that she has an incredible voice, so if you need a voiceover for any of your great adoption promotion anthems that you're rewriting, maybe you can tap her the next time you see her. And Karen's here today to tell us about how her shelter, by operating at their capacity for care, how fewer cats saved more lives and made everyone happy. And she's a great example of one of those people, her and her team, took what I thought might have been originally a suggestion that we made from the UC Davis Correct Shelter Medicine team and implemented it and made it way better than we ever imagined it could be. So we were pretty confident at the time that moving to capacity for care and providing better housing would not cause them to save fewer cats. So we did not expect to hear from them, as we did not that long after, to say with half the housing, they were running low on cats. And I think the first I might have heard of it was when someone from CAT sent an email out to the Million Cat discussion group saying, this is not a joke, we need to import some more cats. And that was not just into their shelter, but that was also creating a safety net in their whole community for all cats at all shelters, and still being able to reach out beyond their community and save even more cat lives. So I am as excited as you are to discover how they made that magic happen. Thanks so much, Karen. Take it away.
Thanks, Kate. That was a very flattering introduction and very kind. I want to thank you and the Million Cat Challenge for inviting me, and Maddie's Fund for hosting this webinar. I also want to thank you and Cindy Karsten and Danae Wagner and others at UC Davis for helping CAT make the move to capacity for care, which was called adoption-driven capacity when we made that transition. So if I call it that during this presentation, I'm talking about capacity for care. So please be forgiving with me, everyone, if you hear me call it that. That's what I mean. Okay, so I'm going to briefly run through what our agenda is going to be today. I'm going to tell you all a little bit about Cat Adoption Team in our community, and then mostly we're going to be talking about our journey to capacity for care. So how we got interested and learned more about it, how we addressed concerns from our stakeholders, what the process really looks like, so what the different steps were and how we planned it, including how we paid for the changes that we made. And then what were the results, the impact on our cats, on our operations, and on our people, which I think was the biggest area where we had changes that I at least really wasn't expecting. And then I'll tell you a little bit about where things are today, and then we'll have time for some Q&A. And just as another reminder, please make sure to get your questions in early as you think of them. We'll have the best chance of being able to get them answered if you get them in as early as possible. All right. Excuse me, I have allergies, so I apologize in advance for how much I might be clearing my throat or sniffling. So Cat Adoption Team was founded in 1998. We're a nonprofit organization, limited admission. We don't have any animal control contracts. Between 80 and 85% of our cats come to us from other shelters and rescue groups as transfers. And then the other 15 to 20% are owner surrenders. Our shelter is located in Sherwood, Oregon, which is just outside of Portland, and it's part of the Portland metro area. And we also have cats available for adoption in 8 off-site adoption centers. We did about 3,200 adoptions last year. CAT was also a founding partner of the Animal Shelter Alliance of Portland in 2006, which is a coalition of the major animal welfare organizations and shelters and the Veterinary Medical Association in the Portland metro area. So we work with those organizations. We all operate a targeted spay-neuter program for cats together. And we also transfer animals between our organizations. And CAT is one of 2 receiving shelters and the primary feline receiving shelter in our coalition. So our journey to capacity for care, this is Agent Tripp, who was one of my former office cats and graduate office cat now. He's off in a home. So I joined Cat Adoption Team's board in early 2012 and became the executive director in December of that year. My first impression of the shelter when I first visited was, whoa, that is a lot of cats there. So we have our main area where our adult cats are housed for adoption. We call it our main room. And there were just so many cats. We had rolling packs, a rolling pack of kennels right as you went upstairs, and it was really overwhelming. And we would hear people, leaving without prospective adopters who had come in who left without cats, saying there are just so many, it's hard to choose. And our staff and volunteers were really overwhelmed with basic caregiving for all of those cats. So between about 2011 and 2013, we were averaging about 100 adult cats in the shelter at any time during those years. It was actually quite a bit more than that even in the years before that when we weren't managing admissions. So I'm just going to throw in a little plug for managed admissions while I'm here. But since that's not our primary topic, I'll move on. The other thing that was really striking was and challenging was that we had cats living in kennels for months or sometimes even years, which was really not humane or appropriate for the cats and led to deteriorating health and behavior in those cats. So we measure a long-term resident for us as a cat who's been with us for over 90 days. Between 2011 and 2013, we were averaging 41 long-term residents at any time, which means that over 40% of our adult cats had been with us for over 3 months. And that's, I think we can all agree that's way too long. That's far too long for the cats to be spending with us and spending almost, most of those cats living in kennels. We did have free roam rooms, so some of those cats were in rooms. But a lot of the cats were what we would call cage locked. So they were cats that couldn't go into rooms because of health problems or temperament issues. And those cats would just stay stuck in kennels for very long periods of time. So I started being interested in and had heard about portals and was curious about those. The Alliance for Contraception in Cats and Dogs held a symposium in Portland in the spring of 2013. And I talked to Kate Hurley at that symposium and said, hey, I've heard about these portal things. What can you tell me about those? And she said, oh, come here, talk to Danae Wagner. She is the queen of portals, and she can tell you everything about them. So Danae is also from UC Davis, and she allowed me to steal her away to come and visit cat adoption team's shelter while she was in town. And she said, oh yeah, this is too many cats and you should definitely put portals in here. And she also talked to us a little bit about fast tracking, creating fast tracking systems, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Our volunteer manager was able to join us for the tour that Danae came on with us. And that was really helpful and kind of things kept moving from there. Dr. Cindy Karsten from UC Davis came and did a presentation for our coalition, the Animal Shelter Alliance of Portland, in 2013. And that included she offered to do the calculations for any shelters who sent their statistics in about to help us figure out what was our ideal capacity. And so we did that, and also talked about fast tracking. Our director of operations and our volunteer manager both attended that presentation, and I did. Many members of our coalition were there as well. So things just kind of kept progressing. And during all this time, we kept doing a lot more research into adoption-driven capacity, fast tracking, looking at length of stay. UC Davis and ASPCA Pro were both really great resources during that time. Maddie's fund, and I kept the management team and our board updated, would share kind of bits and pieces of information, interesting articles and anecdotes to kind of keep people informed and kind of on track with the thinking as I was kind of planning and we were thinking through where this could go. I'd also started sharing pieces of information with all of our staff and volunteers in our regular kind of mass communications, our weekly updates, and in sort of strategic conversations and meetings. So the strategy, the recommendation from, from Cindy Karsten was for us to move to having 35 to 40 adult cats available for adoption on site. That was a decrease of more than half from our then capacity. And that meant making all of our kennels into either double or triple capacity kennels. Compartment kennels by installing portals and reducing our free roam room populations from about 4 to 6 cats per room. We have 6 different free roam rooms and they range a little bit in size, down to between 1 and 3 cats per room, depending on which room. It also meant the recommendation was also to put in place a fast track system that would involve scoring all teen and adult cats as they came in to identify which cats could be fast-tracked through our system and which were going to need more kind of attention and care as they came through. And that system would determine what housing the cats went into. So that plan kind of freaks people out. The idea of cutting our capacity that much was really alarming, and it was scary for all of us. The biggest concern was really, well, what are we going to do when our partners need our help, and we, suddenly only have room for half as many cats, less than half as many cats, and that was really scary for everyone. And the primary concerns were really among our staff and our volunteers. It wasn't something that we had really concerns from the public on, because this wasn't something that they really knew about. But as we were exploring this internally, it was very nervous making. So I want to talk a little bit about how we kind of thought through and addressed those concerns. One thing that was interesting was that we had sort of a little mini case study, kind of by accident in some ways, which was that in 2012, we had a flood in our building, and kind of related to that, we we reduced the number of cats, of FIV positive cats we were housing in our FIV room. So if you look at this chart, so the blue line there is the average number of our FIV cats in care. So these cats were all in one room. So we went from having about an average of about 10 cats in this room to an average of just over, well, almost 6. It was 5.7. And with that change, we went from 13 adoptions in 2011 to 25 adoptions in 2012. So it was nice to kind of have this like little sample in-house of what this could mean, that by having about half as many cats, we had increased our adoptions almost twofold. In 2013, we kept the number of FIV cats about the same. It was 5.6, and did 30 adoptions. So the adoptions continued to increase. So that was helpful to have to refer to, in addition to figures and stories from other shelters. We had something right in front of us that everyone could see. They could also see that room looked and felt a lot different with 5 cats in it than it did with 10. 10 was really, really way too many. So in terms of the communications, a lot of what we talked about was that what we were doing was really not fair to the cats. And a lot of that really had come from the staff and volunteers. So while we were concerned about, what's going to happen, are we going to be full and then not be able to help our partners, everyone was uncomfortable with having the cats spend this much time in kennels. So we've done staff and volunteer surveys, and just satisfaction surveys that asked a lot of different questions, but the feedback that we got from those, both from staff and volunteers, included concerns about, we really hate seeing cats spend, one, living in kennels for so long, and 2, just spending so much time at the shelter. So everyone wanted the cats to get out of the shelter faster and to not be living in these small kennels. And so people, everyone was bought into that. It also really helped to be able to talk about some of the other shelters that had made this move and seen it work. And we talked about what had happened with our FIV positive cats. And frankly, it also helps to have, we always had the backup of saying, hey, you know what, if it's really a disaster and we're really desperate, we could close the portals and bring in more cats if we had to. We hope not to do that. That's not the plan. But this was a move where we could, in a way, kind of undo it temporarily or something if we had to. I also shared, again, links to the data that we used to get here. So again, we, those articles and webinars and things that we'd watched and things that we'd learned from the calculator that you could use to figure out your capacity was available online. We had shared those things all along the way, and really invited a lot of communication. So there was a lot of, if you have any questions or concerns about this, please let's talk about it. We did hit a point where, I really wanted to make sure that everyone was was on board and really comfortable with it. But we hit a point where it became clear that we couldn't wait for everyone to get comfortable with it. We were going to have to just move forward and hope that the results would make us all comfortable with it. I remember being on a call with Cindy Karsten and our communications and development manager, and we were talking about, well, what about this, and well, what about this, and in that call, and she was saying, well, it's going to work, and you'll just, you'll see that it'll work. And we kind of, we got off that call and said, okay, so basically, we just need to do it. We've just got to do it, and so it definitely required, a leap of faith there, and just saying, all right, let's jump in. So our plan, of course, involved getting funding in place to install the portals, because that was the biggest expense piece. Making the transition during the slow season, because we didn't want to stop or slow down intake at all. But by doing it during the slow season, we were able to make the transition without impacting intake. Related to intake, we did not change our intake criteria at all. So we didn't say to any of our partners, you can only send us, fast track cats or anything like that. We didn't make our intake criteria any more stringent. We took the same cats that we took before. And actually, over time, we were able to take harder cats and more difficult cats. But even from the beginning, it was important to us that we not change our intake criteria. We needed to put our fast track scoring system into place, and then we needed to clear the shelter as much as we could for the portal installation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about funding, and this is going to throw me off of sort of a time schedule, because I'm going to talk about how we did some of our funding but include funding for some of the projects that we did later, because since we did this initial project, we have installed portals in the rest of our shelter as well. This initial project was for our main adoption floor for adult cats. So initially we received a grant from the ASPCA in 2013, which allowed us to do housing improvements. So we used that for portals, and then also to make repairs to a lot of our kennels. So we had kennels that were missing pieces and didn't have doors that worked properly and things like that. We're really grateful to them for that help. That was the main gift that got us started on this project. Our most recent portaling project was paid for by a grant from an innovation grant from Maddie's fund, which was fabulous. That's allowed us to finish portaling all of our remaining single compartment kennels in our building. So these are kind of the bookend funding right here for our portal projects. We also did direct mail appeal for portals, and we were not sure how this was going to go. This is very different than any direct mail appeal we've done before. Usually they're really focused on, this cat came in and was sick and in terrible shape, and please help us help more cats like this. This was very focused. This was, help us get cats out of cages and twice as fast. And each portal is going to cost $171. Will you fund a portal? And this appeal was made almost 3 times what the next 2 Q1 appeals have made. It basically has outperformed almost every quarter Q1 appeal that we have ever had. And our average gift for that appeal was $90 versus $60. We had a lot of people who sent in gifts of $171. So it was very effective. People were we're really moved, I think, and motivated to support the cats doing this. And I've had many donors who I've talked to, close to that time and even years later, who've said, "Oh yeah, we funded one of those portals," that really connected to that. So I'd encourage you, if you're looking at doing a project like this, to really engage your donors with it. They want to help your cats be happier and healthier in the shelter too. One of the things we've been a little bit concerned about with this was, well, are we making ourselves look bad if we're pointing out that living in a shelter is not great, and living in kennels is not great? But we were able to do it in a way that I think people understood that. They all know that. No one wants cats to live in shelters, but they get that the point is to get them back out of there and into homes as quickly as possible. So being able to make that transition quickly really helped. Again, so if anyone has questions about this or any of the funding pieces, again, remember please to get those in now, or any of the things that we've talked about so far. Try to get those questions in early so we can make sure that we can cover those. I'd also be happy to share the sample of the appeal letter that we sent out with anyone. I'll share my contact information at the end of this presentation, and you can reach out to me. I'd be happy to send you that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of back out from funding now and show you. So this is our fast track scoring sheet, and I'd also be happy to send anyone this if you would like. We looked at 2 other shelters' scoring sheets. For anyone who's not really familiar with fast tracking, it's a way to identify when animals come into your shelter at intake, to try to identify, is this going to be an animal that we can move through here really quickly, or are they going to need more time and resources? And if they can be fast tracked, to move them through to help them move through really quickly. Interestingly, I think for us, we've actually used our fast track system more as a way to identify the cats that needed the extra help. So and our focus is more really catching the slow track cats and focusing on those, and then the fast track cats really kind of take care of themselves. So we looked at a couple of other shelters' scoring sheets as models, and then we adjusted based on our population and our market. So we know what our adopters respond to, and adjusted based on that. So there are 5 sections on here, and cats are, scored, so they get different points within each of those sections. And the sections are age, color or breed, behavior, medical, and other. And other can be plus or minus. So things in other might include, you're part of a bonded pair. That will take points away from you because we know that that's likely to slow you down. And fast tracking isn't about saying like we think you're a worthwhile creature or anything like that. Of course, we think they're all wonderful creatures. It's just about identifying, are you someone who's likely to be here with us longer, or are you likely to be sailing through here pretty fast? Our fast track cats go into double compartment kennels. Our medium, slow, and slow track cats, and our exceptional owner candidate cats, which are the very low scoring cats, they all go directly into triple compartment housing. So we just recognize if you're likely to be here longer, we want to give you bigger housing right from the beginning. And they're also they're going to get put on a behavior plan if they need it. They're going to get put on a special medical plan if they need it. We want to identify them from the get-go and give them what they need immediately. The fast track cats do not go into triple compartment housing or any other special housing. Okay, so what we used to do is kind of wait until a cat had been here for a month or 2 and then say, oh, this cat is not moving, let's move them into a bigger kennel now. Let's move, let's give them more stuff in their kennel. Let's look at doing more for them. But now those cats are getting what they need from day one. Because really we know, for the most part, when those cats come in, right? Most of us can, if we think through it, we can identify those cats. We're like, oh, okay, you're 6 years old, you're a short-haired black cat, you're shy, and you're on a special diet. You're probably not going to be moving through here really quickly. So let's just make sure we're setting you up to be successful from the beginning and supporting you for a longer stay. Whereas the 1-year-old cat who, tabby and white, who's outgoing and at the front of the kennel, is only going to be here for a few days. They're going to do fine in the slightly smaller housing. They don't really need as much because they just aren't going to be there for as long. Okay, so next we worked to really empty the shelter as much as we could so that we didn't have as many cats to move for our portal installation. So we did our project in March, which was when our population is naturally already low, and then we did an adoption promotion, our hard hat adoption special, to try to further reduce the population. So we got as many cats out as we could. So we only had, I think, maybe, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but not very many cats that we needed to move out for the portal install. The portal installation was very noisy because it involved cutting holes through our stainless steel kennels. So we had to really empty out the entire upstairs adoption floor. It took about 4 days. We had 27 portals installed, which left us with 23 double compartment kennels and 6 triple compartment kennels. And our portals look like this. So we had a local company kind of custom make our portals. They built portals in another shelter so that they knew how to do them. We had to make ours a little bit different because we have stainless steel shelves in those kennels upstairs. You can see the shelf on the top left, the left side of the top of the screen there. And they have the sliding door that goes in there. We don't really use the doors. The doors all just, sit around in a little pile, but we have them there in case we need them. In theory, they would maybe get used sometimes for cleaning, but that rarely needs to happen. So this is for our move-in. This is Winona, who is waiting downstairs for her new kennel to get ready. So this is what our before kennel setup looks like. And this is Winona, just moved upstairs, checking out her new digs and her new portals to look through. The cats did not take long at all to figure out how to use their portals. They were all quite happy with them. So we had the changes that we noticed with the cats were really immediate and more dramatic than I think, at least than I had expected. It got much quieter very quickly. The cats weren't vocalizing as much, but I think one of the biggest changes actually is much less fussing in the litter boxes. I think because the litter box was no longer, just inches away from food dishes and bedding. They're less complaining. The cats were very calm and quiet. They acted more like themselves. They were just expressing more normal behaviors. They were resting more comfortably. They were playing. And with dropping our numbers, we had more time to spend with the cats. We had half as many cats in house, so there was almost twice as much time. We still had the same number of cats coming through, so we were still, the time for processing intake and adoptions and things like that was the same. But in terms of daily caregiving, we had a lot more time to work with. So we suddenly had time to be able to do things like behavior modification, enrichment, and other housing improvements that we just were not able to do before. And it was like suddenly this whole world opened up to us that that just wasn't a possibility before. And honestly, had not been part of the plan. The plan was, okay, the cats will have bigger housing and they'll be more calm and they'll be healthier and happier and they'll get adopted faster. We hadn't realized how much more making this change would make possible. So this is what one of our standard doubles looks like now. So we go left is litter, and then right is rest and relaxation. That they have, the food, water, their bed, scratcher, Heidi box, second bed area. They all have a hanging toy. They have loose toys. They also have this. We put these scent rubber. I have a better picture of a scent rubber. I'll show you in a minute, actually. So the cats have better space this way. And then this is what our triples look like. So we use, again, the triples are for the cats that are we expect to be with us longer. And we also use these for bonded pairs. So it gives them a lot more space to work with. All of our kennels are actually identified with, let me see if you can see this on any of these. No, you can't quite. They have little stickers that say slow or fast above the kennel numbers, just to make it really simple for staff who are moving the cats into them. This is one of our free roam rooms. Years ago, this was a room that would hold 8 to 12 cats. When we moved to the recommended 18 square feet per cat guideline, it put this room at about 4, or sometimes we'd push it to 5 cats. The 18 per square feet was somewhere between 4 and 5. Now it maxes out at 2 cats to put the population for our whole adoption floor at the right number. And I've got to say, it is amazing how much different a room feels when you only have 2 cats in it, and how much better the cats do when you're only making 2 cats that don't really know each other well live together. So the fighting and the or stress are just way down. You can keep less furniture in the room, which makes the room much less cluttered. It's much nicer for people to go in and visit with the cats. You don't end up with the same thing where you have 1 or 2 cats that are really outgoing that make it so that the more quiet cats don't get noticed. This room is currently set up for one very nervous cat, and people can go in there and do a lot of behavior modification work with her without any distractions, because there's no one else in there. It's a slow season, and she can have a room to herself right now. So this is what happened to our length of stay. So 2013 was basically our baseline year, because we installed our portals in the spring of 2014. So this is for adult cats, and this is not including time in foster. Our length of stay numbers are not perfect, because they do include time in treatment. So anytime the cat spends in the hospital, or ringworm isolation, anything like that. But this is sort of the closest we can get with our software right now. So we went from an average length of stay of 45 days to we went to 33 in 2014, and then it kept dropping. So it dropped by 26% in year 1, and then over the first 2 years, it dropped by 47%. It actually took a couple of years for us to be able to really realize that full impact, because it took that long to clear out a lot of the long-term residents that we had that were hanging out for a long time. And now it's kind of stabilized a little bit more. It's still dropping some, but it's kind of leveled out some. But that's a decrease of almost half over 2 years. The cats are happier. They go home faster. They act like themselves. People notice them. The people who come to adopt aren't overwhelmed by a huge number of cats. They just go home better. One of the things that was really striking to us was what happened with our number of long-term residents. Again, for us, long-term is over 90 days in care. So in our first year, our number of long-term residents dropped by 52%. Over the first 2 years, it dropped by 81%. So it's a significant decrease. And honestly, we take a lot more difficult cats in than we used to because this now works. So because the cats don't just sit around and we're able to move them through, we take more of them from our shelter partners. So we're actually willingly intentionally bringing in more of these cats and still more difficult to place cats, and still having fewer cats turn into long-term residents in our care. And I think that's a big part of what's happening, is that we're not turning the cats into long-term residents by putting them in housing that stresses them out. And we're identifying cats that come in that need special care quickly, and giving them that supportive care so that they can be successful. So our adoptions also increased this time. So as the average number of adult residents decreased by 40%, our adult adoption numbers increased by 30%. So the bottom line for a lot of people isn't just, are things nicer for the cats that you have, but did you save more lives? And yes, we did. We saved more lives every year. Our adoption numbers have increased each year. And I want to talk a little bit more about how that all works. So and just looking at this to kind of closely tie this a little bit more together, we're just looking at our adult population numbers. So they've decreased pretty significantly. When you have roughly half as many cats to care for every day, you can do a lot more with your cats. So you can do enrichment. So our cats have a lot more in-kennel enrichment, so a lot more toys, smells, things that we're able to provide for them in their kennels to make their lives more interesting and provide them safe places to hide, because we have time to give them those things and because they have more space for it. But we're also able to provide them with more enrichment outside the kennels. So we have enrichment volunteers and staff that work to do different activities to provide enrichment for the cats. And they're getting enrichment at least 5 days a week outside of what is just provided in their kennels every day. We work really hard to provide a lot of enrichment for our isolation ward cats, especially because their lives are more boring being in isolation. So we use food puzzles, and some of them are, fancier ones that people donate to us, and some of them are, homemade ones like this. A lot of the enrichment stuff that we use make great things for volunteers to make for us, including things like, Girl Scout groups that might be too young to come and volunteer at the shelter. And we integrate scent and visual and sound and try to really mix things up for the cats. Most of our free roam rooms and our isolation wards have TVs, and we play cat TV for the cats. They have squirrels running around on them or birds flying on them. And some of the cats they ignore them, and some of them fixate on them and will, try to paw at the TV. And some do this and just sit there and lounge and watch the TV like how people might. It's very silly. I know some of you are going to laugh at this, and I don't blame you, but we have some cats that will go out on stroller walks. We had a couple of strollers donated, and for some of our cats that have needs that are harder to meet, we have some volunteers who will take our cats out on stroller walks. Some cats hate it, and some, obviously, if a cat hates it, we don't take them on stroller walks. Some of them love it, and it gives them a little bit more exposure. We have one cat recently who was a very difficult to place cat, and we sent her stroller home with her when she got adopted because she loved her stroller walks so much. We use Feel Away in our excuse me, I'm having a slide issue. There we go. We use Feel Away throughout our shelter to help reduce stress in the cats and help them feel more comfortable. And we also use this as a photo of a cat using one of the scent rubbers I mentioned to you earlier. So these are made with pipe insulation with felt glued to it. and then we wrap it around the kennel bars, and so the cats can rub their faces on it and get their own pheromones on it and make themselves feel more at home. And then we'll move that with them if they move to another kennel. So we really try to make them comfortable in their space as much as we can. And again, that was just something that we really didn't have the brain space for before, when we were just buried in cats. We have a behavior modification for cats who are shy or easily overstimulated or have aggression issues. We do clicker training and agility. It's very effective. I want to show you a little video of, this is a cat that was in our socialization program. So we're able to do a lot more socialization work with adults, but especially with kittens that come in who are maybe semi-feral kittens and really need the work. And we work with them in foster care, but also we've been able to do more with them in the shelter now. And this is one of our graduates, Baby Bell. Okay, so there we go. Okay, we've also been able to add more in-depth and complex and kind of creative medical management, including some medical approaches to behavior. It looks like I've got a problem with one of the photos that was on here. It's not displaying, but we had, one kitten named Rialta, who had just really chronic diarrhea that was not responding to treatment. And we ended up our vet was able to try a number of different diets with her, including, a raw diet, which is not something that we, normally would do, but we were really pulling out all the stops and looking for something that would be successful with her. Ended up with her on a special limited ingredient diet, and she eventually put on weight, and her diarrhea cleared up, and she was just adopted a couple of weeks ago. And then this cat in the photo here is Lily. She's on a behavior modification plan. She's on a Calm diet by Royal Canin. They have a diet that's supposed to help with keeping cats calm, and she's wearing a pheromone collar as well to help with. She's the cat who was in the room that I mentioned earlier. Had one cat in it right now who was on a behavior modification program. She was quite a little mess, swatty, just hiding in the kennel and swatting at everyone, but she's doing really well now, coming out, seeking attention, doing much better. So all medium and slow track cats and exceptional owner candidate cats, if they need them, they get a plan. So we create a plan for that cat. We just say, okay, what do you need? You need behavior modification. We need to look at different housing for you and figure out what that is. And plus anyone on the staff who identifies the cat as needing extra help. So I want to show you this video. This is of a cat named Columbia. So Columbia came in. She was a cat who was, in a kennel, down in her bed, pretty shut down. Did not want to engage at all and would get swatty if you tried to engage with her, but she was just petrified. However, she would respond somewhat to treats. This is her, so she did clicker training. This is our volunteer manager, did clicker training with her. As you can see, she did very well with clicker training. This took a long time to get her to this point, but she responded to it very well, and it was because of the clicker training. I mean, that's what brought her out and got her to the point that she could get adopted. You can see she also got a little chubby, but we'll take chubby and adopted over not chubby and freezing in the corner of the kennel and living in a kennel for months on end. So these are the kinds of things that we're able to do now that just weren't options in the past. All right, so the plans for the cats, they include things like trying different housing, trial foster, the behavior modification programs, different marketing strategies, medical treatment options. We do make some of our cats available for a foster to adopt program where people can do a 2-week or 30-day kind of trial in their home. alternative placement options. Like most of our adoptions are indoor, but we'll, an indoor-outdoor or an outdoor-only or barn cat placement. Just kind of thinking out of the box in terms of placement options, adoption fee adjustment, or bonus stuff like we'll send this cat's stroller home with them. Whatever it is that we think might help a cat get home. So we can have plans for these cats because we have fewer of them. When we had 40 to 100 long-term resident cats at a time, we could not have had a plan for each of those cats. It was just too many. But when we have 2 or 3 of them at a time, it's or 2 or 3 long-term residents, and then maybe another handful, or maybe even, our average is 6 across the year. We can work with those cats. A lot more is possible. One of the biggest changes, and again, this is one of the things that I think was really surprising to me, was how making this move impacted our staff and volunteers. It was really night and day in terms of the kind of the pride in what we give our cats. They're recognizing just that we can give them good care, that they're not spending all of that time in kennels, and we're able to help them get out. And we're much more willing to take risks with cats. So we're more, I see the staff more confident that we can figure something out for a cat. So we're more willing to take a cat that looks like it's going to be a difficult to place cat. I think because there's not that fear that, oh gosh, but if we take this cat, it's going to end up stuck in a kennel for 6 months or a year and a half, because we know we can figure something out for them. And what ends up happening is that we're able to save a lot more lives because of that. And then we're giving all of our cats a lot better care while they're with us. And the people who work with cat and are engaged with cat are happier too. So it's really been an amazing transition for us, across the board. So today, throughout our shelter, we don't have any single compartment kennels except the large ones or those that can't be portaled for some reason. We're giving our cats individualized care, and we're always growing. Our supporters love what we're doing, and beyond funding for the projects of installing portals and improving that housing, they love knowing that we're investing in our cats and giving them that individualized care. It has really engaged them on a different level. Our single compartment kennels look tiny to staff. As soon as we got the initial ones portaled, single compartment kennels started looking bad and wrong to people, and they don't expect the cats to tolerate them. We have reduced across our coalition public intake of cats by over 50% through our spay-neuter programs over the past about 10 years, and our live release rate for cats is up to 93% in the Portland metro area. So our local focus is really on difficult to place cats. So it's really important that we've gotten to the place where we can really give those cats the care that they need and help move them through our shelter. So I really encourage everyone to consider making this move, and I am happy to help anyone who has questions or is wondering about any aspects of it in any way that we can. And I know we have questions now, and I've been talking for too long, so I think we're ready to start taking questions.
All right, Karen, thank you so much. That is so inspiring, and it almost sounds too good to be true. But let's take a look at the first question, which I think kind of relates to that. Did your adoptions go up in terms of percentage of cats you took in that year, or in absolute numbers?
Well, we are an adoption guarantee shelter, so all of our cats that come to us, unless we have a death or a euthanasia due to a serious illness that can't be treated, those cats get adopted. So it was absolute numbers because our percentages are, you know, nearly every cat, except for incredibly sick cats that we can't save.
Okay, here's a question about fast tracking. This is from Katie, and she asks, how fast will you fast track spayed neutered kittens? Our shelter's protocol currently requires every cat to be 1 week past their second FVRCP vaccination before they will even be admitted to the quarantine room where they usually get sick. Convincing staff to change has been impossible thus far, and this slows our fostering down so much.
We don't use the fast track scoring system on kittens, but our personal, my feeling is, and the way we operate is we limit the amount of time that kittens spend in the shelter to pretty much as little as possible. Being in the shelter is not good for kittens. They're just going to get sick there. So I mean, when we have kittens come in, if they're old enough to stay in the shelter, which for us is about 8 weeks, they get vaccinated and they go right on the adoption floor, and they can go home as soon as they're spayed or neutered. They can get put on hold as soon as they hit the adoption floor. If they're sick or under socialized or underage, they go into foster care, and they don't come back until they're ready to go to the adoption floor.
Okay, well that kind of relates to the next question here, which is how do cats in foster homes fit into the picture of capacity, reducing length of stay, and increasing adoptions?
Oh, yeah. So for us, you know, again, we primarily use our foster program for kittens, and usually for kittens who aren't ready. They aren't ready for adoption because they're underage, or they need socialization, or they're sick. We use foster homes for adult cats if they need. Sometimes we need to try them in a different environment. So we'll have occasionally have a cat who's just doing really, really poorly in the shelter. Maybe we've tried them in some different housing at the shelter, and it's not worked. And we want to see if this is a cat who is just doing poorly in the shelter, but they're going to be a different cat in a home. So we may try them in a foster home for a few weeks to see if that's the case. But we don't use foster homes as just general housing for adult cats. Because for us, the cats will move faster if they're at the shelter where they can be seen by people, or where they're more accessible to adopters. So if unless there's a reason they need to be in foster care, if they're an adult cat, we want them at the shelter or at one of our adoption centers.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and I'm sure it's one that's on many people's minds. Has this been revenue positive, negative, or neutral for your organization?
Oh, I would definitely say positive. So it's the direct costs of installing the portals and making the housing changes were covered by grants that we received, and specifically for them, and by funds from that one direct mail appeal, which as I mentioned, did far better than similar appeals that we've sent out at that same time of year. But with the increase in adoptions, that's also increased adoption revenue, and I believe that our general donations have increased as well, because our supporters really like to see what we're investing in our cats in terms of things like enrichment and behavior modification, and those are things we couldn't do before. So we're able to demonstrate a much higher level of expertise and care for our cats than we could previously, and people want to support that. And I think that that's been a big part of our general donations growing over the past several years.
Yeah, it seems like capacity for care is just a really, it creates a virtuous cycle.
It really has. I mean, it's been part of and connected to so many other pieces of growth at our shelter. It just made a lot of things possible for us. And I really encourage others to look into it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Karen. It looks like we're just about out of time. And I want to say thank you to all our participating shelters. If your shelter isn't already in the Million Cat Challenge and has the desire to save even just one more feline life, we welcome you to join us. To register, visit www.millioncatchallenge.org. If you have any questions, we are always here to help. You can reach us at info@millioncatchallenge.org. Thanks again, Karen, and thanks again, everybody, for taking time out of your busy day to be here, and have a great day.